Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are tuning our instruments and taking a hard, honest look at a topic that I think most people assume they should be naturally good at. But usually they find out pretty quickly that they need a few lessons.
That is a very polite way of putting it. Usually they find out when the noise becomes unbearable and, the neighbors start complaining.
Exactly. We are talking about marriage. But we aren't looking at the legal contract or the tax benefits or even the romance novel version of it. We are looking at the art of marital harmony.
And you mean that literally.
I do. We have a stack of sources today, from Kevin Leman to Timothy Keller to research from MIT, that all point to this one central controlling metaphor. Marriage isn't a static state you enter.
No, it's a musical performance.
It's a performance.
A performance that requires two very distinct, very different instruments learning how to play a duet without driving the audience or each other.
Right.
Absolutely crazy.
And that's the hook for today. We call it the learner hook. I mean, think about the people listening to this. You, listening right now, you're likely a high-functioning person. You prepare for everything.
Oh, totally. You studied for your degree, you researched the best tires for your car, you optimize your gym routine.
Right. But then people get married and just assume, well, I love this person, so the music should just happen.
Right. It's the magic assumption. It's like buying a beautiful Steinway piano, dropping it in your living room, and then just staring at it, wondering why you aren't hearing Mozart yet.
You have the equipment.
The love, the attraction,
Yeah.
but you don't have the skill.
So our mission today is to bridge that gap. We're pulling from Dr. Kevin Leman's sheet music, Strength Space Marriage by Jimmy Evans and Alan Kelsey, Fighting for Your Marriage, and even some practical lab work from 52 Uncommon Dates.
And the goal is to move your relationship from cacophony, just noise, to an actual symphony.
And to do that, we have to start with the harsh reality of the first performance.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're starting with Dr. Kevin Leman and his book sheet music. He has this quote that I honestly think should be printed on every marriage license application in bold red letters.
Oh, I know the one.
He says, quote, "The first night might result in more noise than music."
It's such a bold statement, but it's so incredibly validating for anyone who has been married for more than 24 hours.
Right.
Lehman is pointing out this massive expectation gap. We live in a culture that's so romanticized. We expect the honeymoon phase to sound like the London Symphony Orchestra, perfect harmony immediately.
And when it doesn't.
When it doesn't, we panic. We think, oh no, I picked the wrong partner, or we're incompatible. But Lehman uses this great analogy of the violin to debunk that.
Right, the violin.
Imagine you hand a total beginner a violin. You don't hand it to them and immediately expect applause.
No, you expect screeching. You expect the neighborhood dogs to start howling.
Precisely, because the violin is a difficult instrument. It has no frets. You have to find the note. And in marriage, because there is sexual attraction and emotional intensity, we expect a virtuoso performance immediately. But Leman argues that marriage requires the exact same learning curve as that violin. You have to learn the instrument.
And this is a crucial distinction in the text. When he says the instrument, he doesn't mean your own instrument. He means your spouse.
That is the core of his argument, and it's where most people get it wrong.
Yeah.
We tend to walk into marriage trying to play our song louder so the other person can hear us.
Here is my personality. Here are my needs. Adjust to my tempo.
Exactly. Leman says your assignment is to wipe the slate clean and learn what makes this specific person purr.
Purr. That's a specific word choice. It implies resonance.
It implies a specific input that creates a specific harmonious response. It's about learning their rhythms and intricacies. And it's not just about anatomy or logistics. It's about their emotional rhythm. He calls it on-the-job training.
Which is a very nice way of saying it's going to be awkward.
It's going to be clumsy. You're going to hit wrong notes. You're going to try to be romantic, and it will come off as cheesy. You're going to try to be helpful, and it'll come off as controlling.
Sure.
But Lehman's point, and this is the big takeaway here, is that the noise you hear in the beginning isn't a sign that the marriage is broken.
It's just a sign that the rehearsal has started.
Exactly. So don't smash the violin just because you hit a wrong note.
Okay, so we've established that noise is normal, but I want to push back on this a little bit. Accepting the noise is one thing, but how do we actually get in sync? Because I feel like trying harder usually just leads to playing faster and louder.
But not necessarily together.
Exactly, not together.
You are spot on. Effort does not equal synchronization. And that is where the science gets really fascinating. We need to look at Strengths-Based Marriage by Jimmy Evans and Alan Kelsey. They reference a study that I think creates the perfect mental image for this.
This is the Cello Experiment, right? I read this and I had to reread it to make sure I wasn't missing something.
It sounds like science fiction, but it's real. This comes from Dr. Peter Senge at MIT and Daniel Goleman. So picture this setup. You have two cellists. They're placed in separate soundproof rooms. They cannot see each other. They cannot hear each other.
Which is a recipe for disaster if you're trying to play a duet. That's basically solitary confinement.
You would think.
Oh,
But
yeah.
they're given the exact same sheet music. And this is the key. They are given a metronome to sync their timing.
Okay.
Now, here is the kicker. They attached electrodes to the cellists' heads to measure their brain activity.
And what happened?
Despite the physical separation, despite the soundproof walls, their brain activity synchronized perfectly when they played with that shared metronome.
Wow. So even though they were isolated, something external, the metronome, kept them connected neurologically.
Exactly. And Evans and Kelsey apply this directly to marriage. They argue that for a couple to be in sync, especially when life feels chaotic or when you feel emotionally in separate rooms.
Because of work or stress or kids.
Right. You need a shared metronome.
What does a metronome look like in a real marriage? Because we can't just have a ticking device on the kitchen counter.
Well, in this context, the metronome represents a shared vision or a shared spiritual focus. It's about presence. The cellists had a presence with the music and the time signature that transcended their physical isolation. If a couple creates a shared vision, that metronome, they can move through the day separately, deal with different stresses, but still be playing the same song at the same tempo.
That's powerful. It suggests that connection isn't always about face-to-face interaction. It's about orientation toward the same thing.
Right, but, and there's a but here, moving from the classical structure of a metronome, real life isn't always that rigid, is it?
Not at all.
Sometimes the sheet music flies out the window, the baby creates a blowout, the car breaks down, you lose your job.
The metronome breaks.
Or the song changes entirely. And that is where we have to pivot our musical style from classical to jazz.
I love this distinction. This comes from Fighting for Your Marriage.
Yes, specifically Peter Frankel's concept. He argues that a great relationship requires digging the partner in a jazz bebop sense.
Digging them. That's a very cool cat of him. But break that down. What is the difference between a classical marriage and a jazz marriage?
Classical is about adherence to the score. It's perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
You are the husband, you do X, I am the wife, I do Y, we do this at 6:00 p.m. It's rigid. Jazz is about improvisation. Frankel says you can't just stick rigidly to the script. You have to be able to improvise with your partner's moods.
So if I come home and I'm in a minor key, maybe I had a terrible day, you don't just keep playing your major key anthem and tell me to cheer up.
Exactly. You modulate, you riff off of it. Frankel says it's about not being frightened by the unpredictability. When your partner throws a curveball or a weird note, you don't stop the song and say, you did that wrong.
You see it as part of the kick of the music.
Yes, you incorporate it.
That reframes conflict entirely. It's not a mistake. It's a jazz fusion moment.
It is. And think about the trust that requires. In a jazz quartet, if the drummer suddenly shifts the beat, the bass player has to follow immediately. They have to be listening so arguably more intently than in a classical orchestra.
So we have the classical discipline of the metronome, the shared values, and the jazz flexibility of improvisation for the day-to-day chaos.
Correct. You need both.
But what happens when the music just clashes? I mean, we aren't talking about improvisation. We are talking about real dissonance. Two different songs playing at the same time.
This is inevitable. And we have a great example of this from Team Us by Ashley Slater. She shares a very personal story about musical taste that serves as a perfect metaphor for broader incompatibility.
Oh, right. Her husband, Ted.
Yes. Ted was into a band called Project 86 and Red.
Which, for those listeners who don't know, is not lullaby music. It's heavy, aggressive rock.
Heart-pounding volume. And Ashley. She preferred the melancholy acoustic sounds of Andrew Peterson. You know, folk singer-songwriter stuff.
That is a serious clash of genres. That's a headache waiting to happen.
It is. And the natural instinct in marriage, going back to our classical mindset, is to try to convert the other person.
If you really loved me, you'd hate that noise and listen to my folk music.
To turn that down. It's giving me a headache. Or, why are you listening to that depressing guy with the guitar?
Great.
Exactly. Becomes a power struggle. But Slater says the solution wasn't forcing the other to change. They realized they just weren't going to sync up on this specific track. So they found common ground elsewhere.
Ah,
They bonded over Mexican food. They watched old Humphrey Bogart movies together.
so they didn't force a duet on every single song. They allowed the divergent musical tastes to exist without letting it divide the relationship?
Right, they compartmentalized that dissonance so it didn't ruin the rest of the concert.
That makes sense. But is agreeing to disagree the only strategy? Because Leo Clark Warren in The Triumphant Marriage suggests something a bit more active.
He does. He addresses this same issue. Maybe it's country western versus classical, but he suggests expanding the repertoire. Instead of just tolerating the difference, a partner says, I suspect we could come to appreciate each other's musical tastes if we worked at it.
That sounds like a lot of work. That sounds like me having to listen to an opera when I'd rather be listening to a podcast.
It is work. But Warren argues it expands the corporate life of the couple. If I learn to love what you love, our shared world gets bigger. If we just stay in our corners, me with my jazz, you with your rock, we are living two separate lives under one roof.
It's the difference between a solo act and a band. A band learns each other's songs, even the ones the bassist wrote that the drummer doesn't really like.
Precisely. It's an act of service to learn the other person's genre.
Okay, I want to move to what I think is the most profound metaphor in our stack today. This comes from How We Love by Milan and Kay Yurkovich. This is about conflict resolution, but it uses the orchestra tuning analogy in a way I hadn't thought of before.
This is brilliant. I use this analogy all the time now. So think about an orchestra. When they tune up before a show, do they start with the drums?
No, again, I'm not a conductor, but that sounds like a very bad idea.
You cannot tune an orchestra starting with the timpani. The percussion doesn't have a sustained pitch. You have to start with the oboe.
The oboe. Why the oboe?
Because the oboe provides a clear, piercing, consistent pitch, usually an A. It cuts through all the noise. Once the strings are tuned to the oboe, then the brass comes in, and finally the percussion.
Okay, let's decode this for the marriage. What are the instruments here?
Yurkovich argues that many couples try to tune their marriage starting with the percussion, which represents sex or physical intimacy.
Ah, I see where this is going. The couple is fighting, they feel distant, so they think if we just have sex, we'll reconnect. That will get us back in tune.
The make-up sex strategy.
Right. But Yurkovich says this is completely backward. You are trying to tune to the timpani.
Huh.
You have to tune the heartstrings, the emotional connection first. That is the oboe.
That's a crucial distinction. The oboe is the emotional vulnerability. It is. It's listening. It's empathy. It's that piercing, clear note of, I see you, I hear you, and I am with you. Only when the heart is tuned can this symphony in the bedroom actually occur. If you skip the oboe, you're just banging on drums in a room full of out-of-tune violins.
And that's why makeup sex often feels empty or temporary. You haven't actually tuned the instruments. You've just made a loud noise together.
Exactly. It's just noise.
That is a powerful image. Tune the oboe first. I feel like that's something you could actually say to your spouse without starting a fight. Hey, honey, I think we need to tune the oboe before we get to the drums.
It communicates that you want emotional connection, which is usually what creates the safety for everything else. It takes the pressure off the physical performance and puts the focus on the relational connection.
So we've got the theory. We've got the metaphors. Violins, cello metronomes, jazz improvisation, the oboe. But how do we practice this? Because as we said at the start, no one picks up a violin and plays Paganini on day one.
This brings us to the part nobody likes.
The boring stuff.
The necessity of scales. Yes, the necessary stuff. In The Meaning of Marriage, Timothy Keller quotes a trumpet instructor. And the advice is painfully simple. All you have to do is practice scales. Scales. And more scales.
And in marriage, scales aren't very sexy. We aren't talking about grand romantic gestures here.
No. Scales are the daily routine of kindness. It is the monotony of service. Taking out the trash without being asked. Listening to your spouse vent about their day for 10 minutes without offering a solution. Making the coffee.
It's muscle memory.
It is. And the trumpet instructor says that eventually this monotony leads to freedom. Suddenly you aren't thinking about your fingers or your breath. You are just expressing emotion through music. A marriage that does the daily scales eventually gets to a place of effortless improvisation.
I love that. The freedom comes through the discipline, not in spite of it. If you skip the scales, you never get to the jazz.
Exactly. But let's give the listener something fun to do, too. We don't want to leave them just taking out the trash.
Okay.
We have a great lab assignment from 52 Uncommon Dates.
This is the music date.
It's simple, but it connects directly to what we've been discussing. The idea is to spend an evening focused entirely on music.
So lay out the ground rules. This isn't just Netflix and chill.
No screens, no
Good.
distractions. The suggestion is to go to a used record store, if you can even find one, or just dig through your old CDs or Spotify playlists. The goal is to curate a soundtrack. Randy Southern and Gary Chapman suggest you raid the collection of a music geek friend, if you have to.
And what are we doing with this music? Just listening?
You're listening, you're singing, maybe you're slow dancing in the living room, but mostly you are using the music to spark deep conversation. Music accesses memory in a way that normal conversation doesn't.
The source lists some specific questions to guide this, right?
Yes, and these are great prompts. Question 1. Do you remember the song that was playing the first time you saw each other?
Oh, that's a good one. It forces you to access that early memory bank. It takes you back to before the noise started.
It reconnects you with the original attraction. Another one. If we didn't have a song as a couple, do we now?
That's interesting. It asks, what is the soundtrack of our current season? Maybe it's an upbeat pop song, or maybe it's a blues track.
And even deeper. What music are you working on these days? Now, that's a metaphorical question from Gottman, but in this context, it asks, what are the themes playing in your head right now? Are you in a minor key? Are you upbeat? What's the rhythm of your internal world?
It's active listening. It's tuning the oboe.
It is. It's taking the time to listen to the other person's melody so you can figure out how to harmonize with it.
This has been, well, harmonious. I feel like we've really unpacked the difference between just making noise and actually making music.
And if there's one thing I want the listener to take away, it's that idea of the unfinished symphony. No marriage is a finished masterpiece. You don't arise at the symphony and just stop. It is a continuous performance.
And going back to Leman, if it sounds like noise right now, if it's screeching and clanging, don't quit the instrument.
Please don't. It just means you are still in the practice phase. It means you need to slow down, maybe find a metronome, maybe do some scales.
And definitely tune the oboe before you hit the drums.
Always tune the oboe first.
So that is your challenge for the week. Go home, put on some music, look at your partner, and remember, you're building a repertoire together. Thanks for diving in with us.
Keep practicing.